Hello and welcome. Welcome to my lecture series on Star Wars 5, Empire Strikes Back. And, well, this is one of the most critically acclaimed movies of the entire cinematic history. So this is going to be pretty great. We have a very good movie coming up. And, well, if you've been following along, there's going to be a lot to learn here. And this is really where Luke finds himself. So we could call this the most profound out of all the movies. Although the other ones are quite profound. And, well, I just want to give you some reminders, right? Some reminders of the thing that we've been kind of talking about throughout this entire, throughout the first four movies. It's, Luke is you. Luke can be you. You could also be Anakin. You could also be Darth Vader. And this is your galaxy. And all of the characters that Luke interacts with are, we could say maybe part of him. And we experienced that a little bit in Star Wars 4, A New Hope, with Obi-Wan, and him sort of becoming a part of Luke. And this is where it really gets to this is where we really start to understand exactly what it means. So, this movie starts with Yoda, right? Yoda is the one that really makes this movie. There really is nothing profound about this movie without Yoda. So I think, I wanted to start it right there. You know, if we're going to start this movie, we're going to start it with the person who's delivering the wisdom. If we're looking from a Jungian perspective, he's the figure of the self. He's the figure of the... we'll get into that. So the way it starts out is very simple. We have Luke gets taken out by this abominable snowman type of character. And the only lesson that we want to learn here is very simple. It's Luke isn't strong enough or doesn't know the Force well enough or isn't trained enough to even handle an abominable snowman. How is he even going to take down Darth Vader? And it's a good point. You look at the entire fourth movie, right? Even if we go back to the fourth movie, how did we end, right? We ended with he never really got trained. Obi-Wan was only there for a little bit, just kind of taught him the basic lessons of the Force, and he took down the Death Star with the skills that he already had as a pilot. So he really learned nothing about being a Jedi. He just learned, let's say, the mindset, the mentality of being a Jedi. And, first of all, he became a hero. So now he realizes, and this is the thing that gets him started, is very simply, sure, I have the courage. Sure, I have the hero, we'll say, persona or hero mindset. Yet, I'm not trained and I don't really know how to do this. So he just finds a way to get rid of this abominable snowman character, and then when that happens, when he realizes that, I don't really know what I'm doing here, he sees this vision of Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan says, you will go to the Dagobah system where you'll be trained by Yoda. And that's the exact idea. So, we're going to get into what Obi-Wan means a little bit more deeply, and also Yoda himself. So, Luke says, I'm going to go on my hero's journey. I'm going to do exactly what he did last movie. We don't really need to go too deep into that. And he says, I'm going to go and find Yoda. And this is where we get to, exactly what Yoda is. So, I love this scene. Oh, how should I do it? All right. Before I do this, I'm going to give you the parallel archetype, how this is really, how this works out in a different movie. So in a different movie, the way it worked out was, this is Lion King, and Simba's kind of on the wrong path. He kind of needs to put himself together, but he realizes that he needs to put himself together. And you have this Rafiki character comes up to him and he says, Asante Sana, squash banana, and starts singing some random song. And Simba kind of tells him to go away because he's like, you're a stupid little monkey, get out of here, I don't really want to deal with you. And, Rafiki reveals to him that he's the wise character that he's been looking for, and Simba gets blown away from it. So we'll start with that basic idea. And look at Simba's face here, right? Simba's absolutely blown away because he's like, wait a second. I've been searching for something and I didn't really think that I'd find it, but the moment that you realize is, well, a powerful moment. So what happens is Luke, he goes in and he goes with R2-D2, who's the representation of something like adventurousness and curiosity and risk-taking. So he does that, and he finds someone like Yoda, who who spends the first 5 minutes of this movie, the first 5 minutes that you ever see him on film, because remember, came out 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, acting completely dumb, making absolutely no sense. He says, found someone you have, I would say, and then he starts digging through his food and eating his food, and eats Luke's food. And the question is, like, what is he doing here? And, well, the answer here is very simple. And we could say, when you meet someone who's incredibly wise, or when you meet, if we're going to say Yoda is the symbol of the ultimate wisdom within Luke, then you're not going to understand it at first. And this was the exact problem that Luke's father had. Luke's father, Anakin, spent his whole life, we'll say, or his whole Jedi life, ignorant of Yoda. Yoda would tell him something, which, well, first of all, what is the reason why Yoda speaks backwards, right? He doesn't speak in a grammatically correct way. It's because wisdom is confusing, right? When someone says something that's incredibly wise, it's usually through some sort of paradoxical statement or counterintuitive statement, something that is outside of your current perceptual system, outside of your current, we'll say, knowledge base. And Anakin, who spent his whole life feeling lost, right? His whole Jedi life feeling confused. Every time he listened to Yoda, he wouldn't listen. He really wouldn't pay attention. And, well, I'm not going to say you can't blame him, but there's a justification for it, because it's very difficult to understand the wisdom of the past, because that's exactly what Yoda is. Yoda's been alive for 800 years. He's the person who's been carrying on the Jedi culture throughout the generations. And, well, try to read any text that's 800 years old. Shakespeare, any American foundational documents, like in the 1770s, the Bible, right? You try to read any of these wise spiritual texts, anything like that, it's almost like it's in a different language, right? You read Shakespeare, and that's Old English. It's essentially a different language. You read something like, well, good luck reading the Bible. Good luck reading any spiritual text, especially Chinese texts. Like the Chinese have very, very sophisticated history. They were one of the strongest dynasties to ever exist, and they have so much wisdom to come out of that. Lao Tzu. Who's the other one? A few of the warrior types, the hero types, and if you try reading their books, it's like, good luck with that. And that's sort of the idea. The idea here is Yoda is the wisdom from the past. He's the wisdom from the old Jedi Order, or he's the wisdom that comes from the culture, right? You could say that we've been developing this idea this whole time. We could say Darth Vader is the representation of the bad part of the culture. But there's also a good part, right? And the good part could be represented like Jedis, right? Jedis in our regular society. You could say something like positive, influential people who post their stories online, whatever that is, right? So if somebody gives you the story, I was watching this movie the other day. It was called Free Solo, and it's somebody who does these crazy challenges of, rock climbing and climbing up mountains and doing all these things and overcoming mental barriers and just being a hero, It's like that, we could say, is the representation of the culture that allows you to be yourself, the culture that allows Luke to say, wait a second, I don't have to be the Darth Vader that wants me to fit into a system and pursue something that's not really that meaningful and essentially something like sell my soul. It's like, no. There are people who are living out living out their individual selves in the real world today. And all you really need to do to, well, be motivated by them or emulate them is to just go online, and they exist everywhere. So Yoda's like the representation of the wisdom that's left from all of those things combined. Because you really think of it, it's like, what are hero stories, right? Hero stories are something like, you kind of know what you're going to get when you get a hero story. You know you're going to get somebody who's really determined, really passionate, and conquers some sort of evil, right? And goes on these sort of paths. And you ask the question, have people taken these stories and broken them down before and come up with rules? What will make your life better? How can you become a hero in your own life? It's like, of course, they exist everywhere. And they exist in philosophy. Socrates talked about this all the time. You have whatever, scientific literature, religious literature. It's everywhere. And Yoda's the representation of that which is lost in the past. That religious or wisdom that is lost in the past. And the question is, what does he come off as in the beginning? What does he come off as? He comes off as something silly. He comes off as something that makes absolutely no sense, speaks completely backwards, and steals your food. Because that's our knee-jerk reaction. Our knee-jerk reaction to something like 800-year-old wisdom, or for the Bible's sake, 2,000-year-old wisdom, or for even deeper religious texts like Chinese texts, something like 4,000 years old. It's like when you look at things like these, you say, why do I care about this old book that makes absolutely no sense? And fair enough. But one of the fundamental qualifications of a hero is that, well, he's not Anakin, right? What was Anakin's problem? Anakin's problem was that he wanted to do everything himself. He was ignorant about the lessons of the past. So he just wanted to essentially create the world from himself. He wanted to start everything from scratch. He didn't accept the invention of the wheel. He wanted to invent the wheel himself. And it's a stupid idea. It's a stupid idea because people have been living for 200,000 years, and they've probably discovered some lessons. And, well, it would be nice if you just, instead of having to figure it all out for yourself, which you only have 80 years to do, well, just kind of take some things for granted and build off it. That's exactly what a hero does. So what a hero does is they take the wisdom from the past, they separate the good from the bad, and they say, okay, here's the good. I'm going to take this, right? I'm going to ignore the Darth Vader, and then I'm going to build off it. It's beautiful. There was a quote from Walt Whitman where he said, the story of humanity is a poem, and all I want to do is add a line. And I like that idea. So, we keep going, and Yoda essentially reveals himself as the wise character. He says, I cannot teach him much anger in him like his father. So he's not just some crazy guy. He actually knew his father, and he's speaking to Obi-Wan in that case. And Luke gives that same face, right? You have this face here of like realization. Simba and Luke give essentially the same face. They're like, wait a second, right? There's something valuable that exists in the past. That was one of the fundamental realizations that I came to when I will say, not say discovered, because discovered's really the wrong word, but when I figured out that something like hero stories, something like movies, something like stories are they actually help people, right? They actually make a difference in people's lives, and they're actually sort of a little model of reality instead of some random, long galaxy far, far away that, well, just deals with lightsabers and people flying on ships. It's like, no. These stories actually mean something. And if you look at them in the correct way, then it could actually have a meaningful effect on your life. So Luke comes to this realization, maybe there's some wisdom in the past. Maybe, even though I feel completely alone in this world, I could get a mentor. I could get somebody who has gone through the same struggles as me and hopefully is able to, well, bring me forward. So Yoda's a little bit, I think it's really interesting because Yoda actually gives the same perspective as Uncle Owen in the beginning, right? Uncle Owen says, I'm not sure if I want to train him because, well, he has the potential for good and he also has the potential for evil, and I don't know if I can risk that, which is really weird. But he eventually comes to the conclusion. He says, I'm going to let him actualize his potential. I'm going to see how far he can go, and hopefully he could use this information for good. So we kind of do that, and so what I'm really going to be doing here is I'm going to be taking you through the steps of his training and the steps of, let's say, developing a skill or developing a mindset, and try to see if I could apply it to other things. I'm going to take you through the steps, and also I'm going to try to map it onto other ideas, map it onto other movies, which is going to be really cool because, well, that's what makes it resembling real life. If you relate it to, well, archetypal ideas, or you're related to real life itself, there we go, right? It's not just Yoda talking to Luke in the woods. Actually, one of the things, just one thing that I thought was really cool, it's like Mr. Miyagi, right, in the Karate Kid, you could map Karate Kid and Star Wars 5 together almost perfectly. Like, there's so much connection between the two that they're, well, essentially the same movie. Mr. Miyagi and Yoda are essentially the same character too. Of course, Mr. Miyagi is speaking to Daniel, who's just a regular American dude, and he's speaking in a different language. That's the idea. So, first lesson, first rule, we'll say, of the Jedi Order, and this is the most important rule. And I've found that this is the most important thing that I've had to try to regulate and control in my life. It's called personality control. And I'm going to explain to you what it means through the lens of Obi-Wan and Yoda. So, Luke asks this question. He says, how do I know the good side from the bad? How do I know the dark from the light? And Yoda gives him a really interesting answer, right? You figured he'd give some set of moral principles. You figured he'd say, the good side are people who are selfless, blah, 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 and do this, and then the bad people are the ones who are fearful, aggressive, and angry, But he says something different. He says, you will know the good from the bad when you are calm, at peace, passive. And it's a really, really interesting idea. What he's saying is, well, you have to get yourself in, let's say, the right state of mind. You have to, once you get into the right state of mind, that's where you'll find your inner wisdom. You'll find the thing in which, well, you'll find a clear answer. And it's a very, very interesting idea, and there's a lot of basis behind it. So, it starts with Obi-Wan, actually in the 4th movie. So he says, the first thing that he teaches Luke, he doesn't really teach him how to wield a lightsaber, doesn't really teach him that stuff. He teaches him how to think, and essentially how to access this, we'll say, state of mind. And he says, let go of your conscious self and act on instinct, right? Let go of, let's say, your ego. Let go of your intellect. Let go of your C-3PO. Let go of the part of you that thinks, and just let yourself act. And And then he says, remember, a Jedi could feel the Force flowing through him. And that's the acting idea. And it says, Luke says, you mean it controls your actions? And Obi-Wan says, partially, but it also obeys your commands. And this is a very, very interesting idea, so I wanted to break it down. The idea of a personality. This is an idea that Jung talked about, and it's also an idea that Jordan Peterson talks about. And I've been trying to develop a little bit upon it as I go along, but it essentially says this. These state of minds that I speak of, right? The fact that, well, sometimes you're angry and sometimes you're sad and sometimes you're happy and sometimes you're really focused and sometimes you're just really not. And, well, you could be easily distracted, right? All of these different state of minds that we have, they carry with them a specific set of actions. So let me give you a basic example. It's like you're sitting, I actually had this problem very bad yesterday. It's like you're sitting on your couch, right, or bed, or whatever, and you kind of get stuck in a YouTube loop, right? You get stuck in a YouTube loop, Instagram scrolling, what else? Watching Netflix, over and over again. This happens to me, well, more than it should. And it's like, okay, that happens. The question is, what are you like in that moment, right? What this idea of mindless scrolling? What is that? What are you like? And essentially, you're completely tuned out of the world. You are, well, easily distracted, right? You're obviously not moving around. You're not very goal-driven. You're not very meaning-driven. You're just sort of, well, being manipulated by these low-level desires that we have. The low-level desire for, let's say, pleasure. And well, that's one of the representations of the dark side, if you want to look at it like that. And it's like, okay, you're laying on your bed, and you're in this mindless scrolling state. But now we're going to get a little more sophisticated, and we're going to call it this mindless scrolling personality, because it carries a bunch of, well, action patterns with it. It's like you're more likely to be eating, right? You're more likely to be eating something unhealthy. You're more likely to, well, not do work. There are all these different actions that go with it. And then let's say you probably don't want to be doing that because you want to be doing your work, right? You're trying to get some work done. And let's try to analyze what would that personality be like. That would be like, well, you go down, you sit, you do some work, you're focused, driven, goal-driven, right? Similar. Anything else? Thoughtful, right? Always thinking. And we'll go with that for now, right? And we could say that these two personalities are in constant clash with each other because one of them is mindless, the other one's thoughtful, right? Or mindful. One of them is easily distracted, the other one is not. And the thing is, both of these exist within you, right? There's the part of you that, like me right now, is very focused, very, very focus on the task at hand. And then there's also the part of me that wants to sit down right now and relax and do absolutely nothing. So we could say that we have access to both of these personalities, and these personalities often come to a clash, right? They often come to a clash. And when they do, it's a matter of which one has control over you, because it's as if they're independent of you. It's as if they're completely independent of your actions, because, well, right now I'm a completely different person that I like standing here as if I was scrolling on Instagram, for example. It's like I'm doing completely different things and I have completely different characteristics. We could say, well, right now I'm thoughtful. I could be incredibly mindless if I really want to, sitting on that couch. And so Yoda says, or well, Obi-Wan says, right? Obi-Wan says, when you access a specific personality, right? When you access this idea of feeling the force flowing through you, letting go of your conscious self, and, well, when you are calm, peaceful, and passive, as Yoda says, then that is the personality in which you are. In which you are at your best, in which you're always thriving. And you can imagine that, well, let's say before I had this lecture, I was in the debate between doing this lecture and sitting on the couch. It's like, we could say, in a basic sense, right here I'm on the light side, the good side, and the couch is something like the dark side. Luke says, how do I know the good side from the bad? And Yoda says, you will become peaceful and passive. And that's sort of the idea. The idea is access this habitual personality. Learn to personality control. Learn to control these personalities and be able to act out the correct ones in the world. And, well, you got a good shot. This was Anakin's problem. Anakin's problem was exactly that. He wasn't able to really control these personalities. He says, this was from the third movie. He says, I want more, and I know I shouldn't. When Anakin said this, he told this to Padme. He says, I want more. I want to do more than what the Jedis are giving me, but I know I shouldn't. It's as if the driving factor of his decisions is impulse. Right? He has this impulse for more, right? When he says, I want more, he has a strong impulse for more. And you can imagine that's something like the devil on the shoulder, right? But then, he also, I think this is the really interesting thing, he also has the angel on the shoulder, right? He has these two things that are going on, and the angel on the shoulder could be something like, and I know I shouldn't, right? I have these Jedi values, and I know that I shouldn't be, having this impulse that will lead me down the dark side. And Yoda would say this is a problem, right? Yoda would say that to be able to control your personalities, it's as if you need to, have a free flow between them, right? You need to have conscious access over your mind. You can't be acting on this sort of impulsive manner that Anakin is. And even though he has this little angel on his shoulder, the only thing is it comes out as sort of like a self-lecture, right? It's like when your parents go to you and they say, do this, and they're like, clean your room, and you're like, okay, I know I should clean my room, but not really. This is actually the problem that I have with the idea of the golden rule, right? What is the golden rule? This is the thing that, not only is it one of the main tenets of Christianity, it's also the main tenet of American society. I was taught this in my secular school when I was 5 years old, and I still remember it. It's do unto others as you wish they would do to you, or treat other people as you want them to treat you. It's a good principle. I think it's a very, very good principle. But it's not implementable, right? Like when let's say me and you get into an argument, and I'm mad at you, right? I'm mad at you. How difficult, I'm in the wrong state. The thing is, how is it possible for me to, in my, let's say, something like mindless state, or angry state, impulsive state, try to... God, I'm trying to think of the mental process that you would have to do to think about the other person's, we'll say, emotional state. It's like you would have to completely extract from your own personality, from your angry personality, and then also become thoughtful enough to analyze how they're potentially feeling. It's like, that's one of the least human things that you could possibly do, right? It's so incredibly difficult, and that's why we don't think that way, right? We've been taught ever, right, to treat other people as though you would like to be treated. But we don't really think that way, right? When I actually act out in the world, I do not have that That is not the thing in which is driving my actions. So we could say it's a strong principle, right? It's a strong, we'll say something like, strong principle, but it's a strong thought, but it doesn't really affect our actions. It's not implementable in the world. And this is the problem. It doesn't access the right state. So Yoda gives sort of the answer to this. Yoda says you need to access a calm, at peace, and passive state. And part of that is, and this is a, we'll call this rule 2. I actually didn't put it here, but I think this is a really good idea. Have a core. Have a sense of individual self. And I'll tell you exactly what that means. Don't be pressured by your external environment. Don't let the external environment have control over your emotions. You should have an internal, we'll say, sense of, what's the idea of? Not being reactive, right? And being, proactive and having a strong core. And because that's exactly what it is. If somebody can control your emotions, if somebody could say something, and this is there's an entire psychological branch on this. This is what marketers are trying to do to you all the time in advertisements. They're trying to control your emotions. What is a food company trying to do? They're trying to get you hungry, right? They're trying to get you into that emotional state. And, if you are so influenced by your external reality, if you're so influenced by your external pressures, if you don't have, let's say, personality control, internal personality control, then not only will they be able to influence your emotions, but they're going to get you in the right state to be able to influence your actions. And it's very simple. What happens then? Then you're not your own person anymore. You're not. You're exactly what they want you to be. Right? You think about someone like Darth Vader, right? That is Darth Vader's defining trait. He's something like a machine. You give him an input, and he will do an output. That's what a machine does. And there's no individual self in there. There's no thinking. And there's no, he has no core. He's just exactly what the Emperor wants him to be. And, that's my biggest problem that I have with devices in general, right? Distractions in general. It's like companies are spending their time, billions and billions of dollars, trying to do exactly that, trying to get your attention, trying to influence your emotions so that you get into that mindless state. They're trying to influence your emotions to get you hungry, get you thirsty, get you ready to party, whatever it is. And they're successful, right? They're successful. They know the psychological hacks. They know they hire the psychological PhDs who are very into the research, who know everything. And you're just you, right? You're just you. You're if you're a human, then you have a very easily manipulable brain. That's one of the flaws that we have as humans. And we can get manipulated. We just can, and we could just lose our sense of self. We could lose our knowledge of what to do and how to act, and just act exactly how other things and other, we'll say, companies want us to act. And that's a problem. So the question is, what is the answer to that? The answer to that is, first of all, know what you want, right? If you don't know what you want, then other people know what you want, right? That's the idea. It's like, this is the psychological literature on this is pretty clear. It's like, if you go into the grocery store with a list of things to buy, let's say that's knowing what you want, then it's much easier, right? It's not, you can't just say it's perfectly easy, but it's much easier to stick to the schedule and buy the things that you want and then go. And the grocery stores are designed so that you make some sort of impulse buys. Every single grocery store or every single store that you walk into is, of course, it's going to give them some sort of profit. But let's say you go in without a list, or you just go in and sort of walk around. You don't have a goal. You don't know what you want. Of course, you're going to grab more things than you wanted to buy. And, well, you're not a person anymore. That little thing means you're not a person anymore. You don't have an internal core. You are, well, completely manipulated by your environment. And so the antidote to that seems to be something like gain control over your brain, right? Gain control over your thoughts, gain control over how you switch from personality to personality. And also, yes, know what you want. There was a great book that I read. I think it was James Clear's Atomic Habits, where he said, we have, I think it was a few moments, like 3 to 5 moments a day that define our day, right? You really think about it. It's like the moment where you're sitting there debating between which personality do I want to do? Do I want to lay around for a little while, or do I want to get some work done? And that decision is one of those critical decisions, because you can imagine right now, I don't really have that much of an impulse to sit down. I'm sort of in the flow, right? That's Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, right? He talks about flow, and once you get into this idea of flow, once you get into this state of, just kind of going, it's like this personality is taken over my consciousness. But in that moment of decision is not your decision now, it's your decision for the next 2 hours. And that is why some of the best things that you could do when you're really in this like between stage is something like go for a walk or meditate if you're really into that. And that's why all religions have something resembling prayer or meditation. It's like that's exactly what they want you to do. That's the wisdom in there. They're trying to get you to access the, let's say, wisdom within yourself. They're trying to get you into a stage in which you can think, a stage in which you are not affected by your impulses, by your animalistic impulses. And by that degree, we could say something like being calm, at peace, passive, and, well, proactive instead of reactive. That is maybe the most human thing that you could possibly do. Because, well, if not, you're just going to be influenced by your animalistic impulses. And we could say on its most basic level, the difference between the dark side and the good side is something like the dark side shows the full range of their animalistic impulses and are completely possessed by it. The Jedi are not simply just humans, right? They're not simply just like rejection of the animal side, but they are sort of the combination between the human side, the spiritual side, and the animal side. They sort of bring it all together. They say, take your impulses, take your motivations, and incorporate them into your decisions. Because, well, one of your impulses is to be a hero. One of your impulses is to have meaning. One of your impulses is to make positive change in the world. That's something that we could say is a either spiritual or animalistic impulse, partially animalistic. And it doesn't say to reject all impulses. It says, don't let your impulses be abused like the dark side, like laziness, like pleasure, like, well, being influenced by external people, something like conformity, right? It's saying have an internal core and learn how to control your personalities, control your animalistic impulses, your spiritualistic, we'll say, personalities, and, well, integrate them into yourself. Now, I just brought up the social media example, and this is why it's relevant. You look at someone like Palpatine, and Palpatine is obviously the representation of evil. We could even say he's the social media companies. We could even say he's the people, whoever designed Netflix to make it so that it just goes automatically into the next video, right? Like, what are they doing? They're just trying to get you hooked. They're trying to get your attention. And what are they doing? They're trying to manipulate your impulses. What does Palpatine say in the third movie here? He says, "Don't you wonder, Anakin, why they won't make you a Jedi Master?" What is he trying to do? What is he trying to do? He's trying to get rage. He's trying to get the personality of outrage. And, Well, he's trying to pull him off the path. He's trying to get him to the exact opposite of clear, peaceful, and passive, right? And he does this throughout. So when he tells Anakin to kill Count Dooku in the third movie, he says, kill him. Kill him. I want you to kill him. And I want you to kill him because it's revenge for him taking off your arm. It's like, what are you trying to do? You're trying to get him to, well, not only conform, but also to experience the feeling of revenge. And the same thing happens in the 6th and 3rd movies. This is what Palpatine does to both characters, saying to Anakin and Luke, saying, strike me down with all of your hatred. Hatred. I want you to kill me. But I don't want to die. I want you to be hateful. And if I could extract this hatred out of you, if I could let you succumb or at least give in to your animalistic impulses, then I've won. And you're not a human anymore. You're not a human. You're an animal. So, now, this brings me to the next idea. And it answers, well, the same Yoda quote answers the exact question that I was pondering for a very long time in the 3rd movie. And it's very simple. How do I know the good side from the bad? And, well, the question is, how do you know if you're on the light side or the dark side? You look at something like the Democrats and Republicans. You look at, our tumultuous political example right now. It's like the Democrats think they're heroes, and so do the Republicans, and they both believe the others are villains. It's like, how do you know which side is right? This is what Anakin was struggling with. He says, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. And Obi-Wan says, from my point of view, the Sith is evil. It's like, so where do you go from there, right? How can you determine who is right? And, well, first of all, that's the ambiguous hero problem. The ambiguous hero problem is that if you decide to be a hero, you could be a hero on both different sides, and you'll be a hero on both. It's like the American soldier is a hero, and so is the Nazi soldier. They both follow the hero's journey, and they go through it perfectly. It's just, well, one was tied to the wrong value system. So the question is, how do you know if you've had the right values, let's say? And how do you know if you're fighting for the right side? And the answer seems to be, when you contemplate your values, are you calm, peace, and passive? And let me phrase this in a different way. When you contemplate your values, what are you motivated by? Right? What is the thing that is pushing you to move forward? Are you motivated by something like hatred? Are you motivated by something like, well, our instinct towards tribalism in that case? Or, well, I'll go on both ways because I like to be politically, well, I'm not going to say neutral, but I like to criticize both sides because I think they're both villains in a sense for this exact reason. And we'll take someone like the left and we'll say the problem with the people on the left is that they want to make changes too fast, right? It's like, yes, we have problems with the system. There are a lot of problems with the system, but your impulse to change, your impulse to progress, well, you could ask the question as, when you say, I want, for something like a protest, when you say, I want change now, it's something like, are you calm, at peace, and passive? What are you motivated by? And you're motivated by something like, I'm struggling with pain. Let's end this pain as quickly as possible. And the reality is, if you're motivated by something like pain, something like, something like a knee-jerk reaction, right? That's what it is when you say, I want to make the change now, because if you touch your hand on the hot stove, the natural reaction is to make a change right now. Then what you're really doing is you're saying, I'm willing to give up this current system, even though the system in which I am trying to implement is, well, we don't know if it's going to work, right? So the answer to that would be something like, slow down, right? Be patience, right? Give some patience, give some thought, right? And say, I'm not going to be motivated by pain. I'm not going to be motivated by this impulse towards, well, getting rid of the pain. I'm just going to be calm, and strive to implement something that is, well, that is well thought out. And that's what made Martin Luther King so incredible. Someone like Gandhi, right? All of these revolutionaries, Nelson Mandela, you look at them, and Rosa Parks, Mother Teresa, right? All these characters, they were so incredibly calm. They said, hey, listen, Martin Luther King, he's like, I want to make change. But first of all, I realize that it's not going to happen right away. And whenever he comes up to give a speech, he's not screaming. He's not doing anything that's impulsive. He's completely well put together, and well, he's completely at calm. He's at peace, and he's passive. And then if you say the problem with the right, I think the main problem with the right is that you can tell maybe they're motivated by something like, well, if you bring up Trump, you could say either like hatred, conformity, right? 90% of the Republican Party liked Trump, and something like power, status, right? All of these things. And you ask the question, are you motivated by, well, something moral, something noble? And, well, of course, there are many criticisms towards that. Of course, you could say if you're motivated by hatred, you're not going to want to, well, you're going to miss the goal. And that's the problem on both sides, where you say, well, one side's tribal, the other side's tribal. It's like, if you're both motivated by hatred for the other, then, well, it's like you're not in the right mental state. You're not in the right personality. And this is why you look at, actually, I read this book. It was The Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss. And what he did was he interviewed some of the most successful people in the world. And you ask them, what is your day like? What is your day like? And he asked them all these incredible questions. And, Ariana Huffington, some really incredible people. And 70% of them, I think it was more than 70%, had some sense, some mindfulness practice throughout the day. Whatever it was, whether it be a walk, whether it be prayer, whether it be meditation, right? They had some sense of mindfulness. CEOs, like things like that. It's because they want to be in control. They want to have full understanding of their thoughts. And, well, that state, that personality that they're trying to access, and each of those different, we'll say, strategies are, well, calm, at peace, and passive, and they access the good side of you. So let's get on to rule number 2. Rule number 2, very simple. Confront your shadow. Confront your shadow. This is a very Jungian idea. And, well, this is where he confronts Darth Vader. This is beautiful. So Obi-Wan comes in as a spirit, and he says, this is a dangerous time for you, Luke, when you will be tempted by the dark side of the Force. And we could say the dark side of the Force, as we've established in the last lecture, is that it's something that exists within Luke, right? Luke is born from a father who is evil. Luke is, well, even his wisdom, even his sense of, well, of course, Obi-Wan's the one saying this, right? Obi-Wan was struck down by evil and is therefore, well, it gave Luke the knowledge of evil in a sense. And the question is, what do you do about it, right? What do you do about the fact that you are evil? And Jung would say, confront it. And so does Yoda. So Yoda says, that place, it's a place in the jungle, he sort of points to it, and he says, is strong with the dark side of the Force. In you must go. Right? Like the typical answer would say, you'd imagine, you'd say, that place is strong with the dark side of the Force. We stay away from there. We don't really look over there. That's what Mufasa tells Simba when he talks about the shadow of his kingdom, right? Where Scar lives. He says, we don't look over there, Simba. Don't even look. Yoda says, that place is strong with the dark side of the Force. That place is strong with the evil that exists inside of you. Confront it. Handle it. Face it. And, well, that's what you must do. So, well, first of all, that's some very good practical advice. Like, before you even get into the idea, it's good practical advice. You can imagine that if you're not in a life in which you are happy, right? If you're not in a life in which you are, let's say, fulfilled, and either your life is stagnating too much, or you get distracted too often, or, well, maybe you don't really have anything under control, or maybe you're too anxious, right? This is the best solution for anxiety. It's like, what is this? What is the solution? It's like, this is what Yoda says. He says, that place in which you really have been avoiding and really don't want to go there first. Go there first. That's the solution with anxiety. It's like, okay, you're struggling with anxiety. It's because you're repressing some thoughts, or at least it's either you're repressing or you can't handle. We'll go with the first one, right? You're repressing some thoughts that are popping their way up. It's like, what do? Do you run away from the thought? We know, anyone with anxiety knows you can't run away from thoughts. They just come and they possess you if you run away from them. So what do you have to do? You have to sit there in your room and confront it. You have to handle it. You have to let it fully hit you at one time and say, all right, let's go to war. We're going to do it right now, and I'm going to fully process this thought, because that's really what your brain is trying to do. It's saying, well, I'm anxious because something happened in the past and I wasn't too happy with the outcome. So my brain's just going to keep going and keep trying to look over it until I figure out the solution. What did I do wrong, and how can I learn for in the future? Because you don't want to make that mistake again. That's the basic psychology of learning. And you could say, what do? You confront it. You confront it, you process it, you handle it, and then you don't have to worry about it again. Or at least that's way too optimistic. We'll say you have to worry about it less, and it's not going to be killing you as much. And maybe you might not actually have to worry about it again. So that's what he says. And then, yes, practical advice. If the place that you really don't want to go to, that's the place you should go to. Always. Because that's the place where you're the most ignorant. That's the place where you stop paying attention. It's the same thing that goes in with relationships, right? Something like a elephant in the room. If you're having a conversation and with a person, and there's one thing that both of you guys don't want to confront, especially if it's a long-term relationship, including a friend relationship, including a family relationship. It's like, if you don't want to talk about that elephant in the room, that elephant is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then eventually, if we're going with the metaphor, maybe it'll sit on you or something. But that's what Luke does. So Luke goes into this shadowy part, and what does he find? Of course, he finds, standing right here, Darth Vader. And, he realizes, okay, Darth Vader lives within me. That's cool. What does Luke do? The first thing that he does, gets impulsive, freaks out. He's like, oh my god, what the hell is happening? And he kills Darth Vader. So, Darth Vader, obviously this is like a dreamlike image. He's not actually seeing Darth Vader, but Darth Vader's head is on the ground right here, and the mask floats away, and you see Luke's face. It's beautiful. And then Luke looks at it, and he says, what the hell just happened, right? Because it really is a dreamlike image. So now let me explain to you, right, what exactly happened. What exactly happened is Luke freaked out, right? Luke confronted evil, but he was in the wrong state, right? He didn't have control of his personality. What are the three that Yoda says? Fear, anger, and aggression. He was fearful of his father. He was fearful of the evil within himself. He was maybe angry, right? Potentially angry, and he was definitely aggressive. The first thing he did was try to cut off his head. So he does that, and we could say it was the knee-jerk reaction. And what is the lesson that he gets from that? He gets the lesson that if I do that, if you cut off my head, Darth Vader says, right? If you cut off evil's head, then, you turn into evil. You turn into Darth Vader. And that's what it means when Luke's face is, underneath Darth Vader. You will become the new Darth Vader. You could say that Luke, a good way of looking at this is that Luke saw potential him, right? He saw the potential within him to do evil, and then he saw exactly what he could be. So you can imagine it starts like this. It says there are two paths that Luke could go to, fundamentally, right? To simplify it, he could be the next Darth Vader, or he could be the next Luke Skywalker, the hero. And he had a dream, he had an image, he had a realization that if he follows certain steps, right? If he doesn't access the right personalities, if he isn't in control of his actions, if he doesn't control his fear, then he knows exactly where he's going to be. He could see it. He could see exactly what he's going to be. And, well, that's why he's the most freaked out. Because who could imagine? What person really thinks, well, I could be the worst person that could ever be, right? What parent goes into having a kid saying, I could be a bad parent, or I'm going to be a bad parent? It's like, well, of course, you want to think that you're the best parent. You want to think that you're going to be a great parent, but there are bad parents. And a good parent would worry about being a bad parent, right? Of course. Because, well, actually, Jung had a great idea. It was a great quote. It was something like, the more attention you consciously pay to your shadow, the more you consciously understand whatever it is, evil, laziness, whatever, the less of an impact it actually has on you. Because, well, you learn to control it. It's the same thing with anxiety. It's like the more you understand your own anxiety, the more you understand the reason why you get anxiety and the individual thoughts that underlie it, well, the less you're going to have anxiety. But if you just try to run away from it, if you just don't want to handle it, well, it's going to take you over. Is there anything I'm missing here? I think that's pretty good. Yeah, Yoda was not okay with this, right? He realizes that it's a failure, and well, this is Yoda's fear, right? This is everybody's fear. It's like Uncle Owen, and Yoda. They both say, they're like, I don't know if Luke should be a hero. I don't know if he should have the potential hero. I don't know if he should pursue his potential, because if he pursues his potential, he's going to find his little monstrosity within him. He's going to find the evil within him, and, well, he's got to actually confront it. I do this all the time with laziness, and I see it everywhere. It's like, we could say laziness is the thing that most people struggle with nowadays, right? It's the thing. It's like, okay, how do you handle that, right? We could say that's part of your shadow. That's part of the thing in which you can't control because, well, most likely you don't want to be lazy. You want to take breaks. You want to take rest, right? But you don't want to be lazy. It's like, okay, so we have that established. Now, what do most people do? Most people say, well, I was a little bit lazy today. And, let's say I spent 6 hours on my phone and, I wasn't really happy about that and I didn't really get that much work done. I was really distracted as I was working and, well, it just detracts from the quality of my life. So then we impose our conscious will upon it and say, but tomorrow I'm going to only do 2 hours, right? I'm only going to work for 2 hours, and that's going to make life easier. There's this functionality on iPhones now. It's called screen time. All it does is essentially say, put a conscious limit on your screen time and say, well, if I was spending 6 hours on my 4 hours on social media today, then I'm gonna restrict myself to 2 hours, and that's just how it's gonna be. And for a while, I had that little screen time thing. And what did I do when I said I was only gonna act 2 hours, and I was only gonna go for 2 hours. 2 hours would hit, and then what would happen? It would say, you've reached the end of your limit. And I'd say, okay, and then press I'm done with the limit and let's go back on Instagram, right? I'm gonna break my rule because, well, there was no introspection in that process. And establishing the screen time, you didn't confront your shadow, you just imposed some conscious rule, some conscious starts with an I don't know the word. Imposition of your will. You impose your will upon, let's say, your laziness, and you hope that it works. And for any person who is struggling with something like that, doesn't matter, right? Food, smoking, and social media especially, it's like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. What is the answer? You must figure out why you are lazy. What is it in you that is, well, causing your laziness? Is it maybe just that you don't want to work? It's like the work that you're doing might be completely boring and, well, let's say we have this impulse Let's look at it a different way. Let's say you have an impulse to meaning, right? You have an impulse to grow and an impulse to do things that are interesting because, well, that's what drives society forward. Is your work fulfilling any of those impulses, any of those instincts? If the answer is no, and the only reason you're doing it because, well, society wants you to, and it would maybe give you a better grade, but you don't really care about grades anyways, and all of these potential things, and maybe you won't get fired and all these things. It's like, well, it's as if there's no motivation. It's as if now we finally understand why you're lazy in the first place. Maybe you're not lazy because you're a lazy person. Maybe you're lazy because you don't have a good alternative, a good meaning to strive for, a good, well, goal. Something to satisfy your meaning drives. And it's like maybe that's the answer. Just maybe. And that's the idea. Confront your shadow. Confront the reason why you're not doing things. And the problem is, well, that requires thinking, right? That actually requires thinking. That requires not only conscious control, but also introspection and, well, trying to understand your animalistic impulses, which is so damn complicated. But we have reached, well, the end. That is it. That is, well, we're halfway through movie 5, and we're going to figure out how Luke actually does this and how he actualizes it at the end of the 5th movie when he confronts Darth Vader. So, take care.